Welcome to the Heart of Money podcast, where we discuss the personal and emotional elements of money and the impact that money has on every area of your life. I'm Austin Black, a personal finance coach that helps couples overcome their fear and frustration of financial management so they can take complete control of their money. What started as a desire to learn the fundamentals of money management has turned into a passion for helping couples work together to achieve financial success and strengthen their relationship with each other. Whether you're looking for the best strategies to manage your money as a couple, or you're tired of struggling to gain traction and want to overcome the fear and frustration associated with finances, I'm here to help, and this show is for you. Ready to learn more? Then let's talk about the heart of money. Hey folks, welcome back to the Heart of Money. I'm your host, Austin Black, and as we go into 2025, we're doing a recap of the top episodes from Season 2 over the last 2 years. This week, we're listening to episode 85, What Does It Mean to Be Fiscally Fit? This was a guest episode with Kelsa Dickey from Fiscal Fitness Phoenix. She's another financial coach and our only guest episode that made it into the top 5. So we're excited to share this episode with you once again. This episode is going to be a lot of talk and shop as two financial coaches get to compare notes, get to talk about client successes, challenges, and everything that goes into really being smart and wise with your money. So I'm really excited to bring this show back to your ears, as it is the number 3 episode in our top 5 from season number 2. So without further ado, let's get into episode 85. What does it mean to be fiscally fit? Hey folks, welcome back to the Heart of Money, episode 85. I'm your host, Austin Black, and I'm joined by an amazing fellow financial coach, mentor, trainer, awesome person, Miss Kelsa Dickey. She is with Fiscal Fitness, I believe I got that correct, out of Phoenix, and also has a financial coaching academy for financial coaches like myself. So I kind of have got connected with her through that and learning and training, because she does such a phenomenal job of helping people like me and people like you. So she gets both sides of the spectrum. So I'm excited to bring her on today and share some of her expertise. So Kelsa, welcome to the show today. Welcome to the Heart of Money.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Austin. Yeah, financial coaching is my jam, whether it's like talking to other financial coaches about financial coaching or talking with people about how to get a handle on their money. It's all financial coaching, and that's my passion.
Absolutely. We'll take a few minutes and just kind of share with the audience a little bit about yourself, about what you're doing professionally, and give them an idea into who you are.
Yeah, so I've been a financial coach for 15 years now. The name of my business is Fiscal Fitness Phoenix. That's why it is a tongue twister. I always say, try and say that 5 times fast. You did a great job, by the way. And about 7 years ago, though, I actually launched the Financial Coach Academy side of the brand as well, which mentors other financial coaches. And, I don't know if you experienced this, Austin, but when I first started financial coaching, I kind of had this sort of, well, I'll say it was naive perspective, a little bit of a naive perspective that I could help everybody, right? That me alone, I would change the world, just me by myself. And then I think the more I did it and the longer I was in the work, the more I realized that, God, this is really a very pervasive challenge that people are experiencing. Financial stress is a very pervasive problem in our world. So many people need help, and some of them I'm not equipped to help, right? Some of the people I'm not perfect for, and they need somebody else. And so that's when the Financial Coach Academy side was born, because I really wanted to help other financial coaches help other people and do the work and that sort of thing. I had learned so much about the actual practical way of coaching, right? The actual, getting our hands in the numbers and really moving things around and meeting week after week and just really seeing the consequences of the strategies we try to tell them to use, or the steps we have them take and the action steps and that kind of thing. And just thinking that there really wasn't much out there to really train coaches on how to really get immersed in the situation with the client without also taking on the stress ourselves, because of course we want what's best for them, right? We want the most potential ever. And sometimes there's consequences to the decisions that they make that we can't foresee. You can't control everything, right? You have clients who will lose their job, or a big whammy will happen or something like that. And how do you get in the thick of that with them without also emotionally going down that rabbit hole with them?
And that is the biggest challenge, it seems like, no matter what kind of client you're working with, of you could hit high level or you could go all the way down and get to the bottom, and there's everything in between. I know one of the things that I really kind of carved out a niche in, um, is people who are looking to be kind of, you said fiscal fitness. So people who are wanting to get their finances in shape, you might say, wanting to get control of that. But I think a lot of times that's like the last thing that we look at whenever we're looking at our well-being, at our personal care, at just things that we need to do better with. So share a little bit of how you came to that kind of target audience that you wanted to work with, and how that even permeates into those other areas of lifestyle that's so important.
Yeah, so the name of the business is Fiscal Fitness. And when I first started it, and really always my whole life, I've always had two loves, fitness and finances. Like I really do enjoy both of them for very different reasons. And what I've noticed over time is the role that fitness or health plays in your life is very similar to that of finances. And for me, the fitness part of it, I could find people to talk with about fitness. I was really big when I launched my business 15 years ago. I was really big into CrossFit. So of course there was this great community aspect to my fitness goals and my training and my strength training and all that kind of stuff. And just finding people I could like geek out about this stuff with, right? But then when it came to money, there isn't a place where you can go where it's like, we all just talk about money together and we all, like those kinds of things, especially 15 years ago. Now it's a little bit different, but, and realizing that actually they're very similar. And what I mean by that is you don't just go and start lifting 200 pounds in the gym because you decided that you want to start lifting 200 pounds in the gym tomorrow, right? Like you have to train your body to get ready to lift 200 pounds. Like you have to train it, you have to eat right. There's all these things you have to do. And you have to do those things before you sometimes see results, right? Like weight loss is one of those things where a lot of the times people fizzle out because they're like, well, the scale's not moving. And it's like, well, you just got to keep at it though, right? Like the momentum hasn't caught up yet. And honestly, money is the exact same way. And so because I've always had a passion for both, when I first started financial coaching, financial coaching really wasn't a thing when I first started. I found the easiest way to talk about it was to talk about it through the lens of fitness analogies. One, because that was a hobby of mine. And then two, because I felt like people could relate to it, right? So people know that just because I eat right one day doesn't mean that I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Like it's got to be consistent actions over time. And yet for some reason, people sort of think that they can, put one budget together and then by the end of the month, they're going to be like, have $10,000 in savings or something, And so by sort of connecting the analogies, it has, I think, made it so that money is less intimidating, and makes it easier for people to digest. And then really and truly, and I think this is the best way that niching does work, is where you just sort of like, it becomes an extension of who you naturally are, right? So for me, I was working out. I love fitness. I love weight training myself and strength training and that kind of thing. So it was just something that I was always doing anyway. So of course I was surrounded by people in the gym. People who I was following on social media were other weight, people and power lifters and bodybuilders and that sort of thing. So it becomes your sphere of influence anyway. So in my mind, I just translated it into money. And then, so that's kind of my niche now, is really people in a self-care space. So I have a lot of naturopathic doctors, personal trainers, bodybuilders, athletes in general. And some of my clients, maybe aren't athletes today, but they used to be an athlete. Maybe they were a college athlete. And it's sort of like this idea of adopting an athlete's mindset when it comes to your money. This idea that like, I'm going to train every day because it just becomes part of my life, not because I am trying to I have to do it or I'm forcing myself to do it, but because I feel better when I do it. And I truly believe, like for me, I feel better when I manage my money. I worry less. I tend to be a worrier and naturally I'm just a worrier. And I worry less when I can see that I have a plan in place, right? When I can look at my money and see I'm okay. These are just thoughts that I'm having, but I'm okay, right? Like I can actually tangibly see that I'm not in a bind financially or that kind of thing. And the same is true for our fitness. The other thing is you can have lots of different training programs depending on the kind of athlete you are, right? So if I am a marathon runner, my training plan is probably going to be very different than if I'm a wrestler, let's say, right? Or, a tennis player, or pick any sport. the idea is that what you do every day to get stronger depends on the outcome you're shooting for or the sport you play, right?
Yep.
And also there's times in your training where you have, for me, I do powerlifting. So I have strength blocks where I'm lifting really, really, really heavy. And then I have weeks and months where I'm not lifting really heavy because you can't go at that pace all of the time, but it's typically I'm peaking right before a meet, let's say. All of those same analogies are true for money, right? Like the training plan that you adopt probably is going to be determined by your goals and the outcome you're shooting for, right? Like, are you trying to get out of debt versus are you trying to save for your kids' college? The way you are making decisions every day is going to be determined by the thing you're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. And there's no two training plans the same. It also has a lot to do with the timeline, right? So like, are you trying to get out of debt in 6 months, or do you care if it takes 2 years? Right? Yep. Because that's going to determine the level of effort you put in. How quickly are you trying to build strength is the way that I think about it, right? When it comes to money. And so really just, again, those analogies, like it seems so obvious when we talk about fitness, but yet for some reason, when it comes to money, it tends to be that like there's one right way to do it. Everybody has to do it a certain way. This is how you should do it. And if you don't want to do it this way, you're wrong or you're bad. And it's like, chances are we just all have different values or different goals, or like we're playing a different sport through life is the way I sort of think about it.
Well, it reminds me of, and you and I have talked before about on my business, there's these core fundamentals of money management that are synonymous across the board, right? I mean, spending less than you make, being in control of your money, having your plan in place, all these things that no matter what you want to do, these core practices, these core mindset even areas need to be the same to accomplish it no matter what facet you go through. But there's people who, they do want to become debt free in 6 months, and some that they're trying to pay off a house, which is not, there's going to take them, 10, 15 years to do that in most cases. So it is such a wide array of options and paths. And I really like how you just laid that out from the training standpoint. I think that is, it's so obvious to us, but we don't even think about it a lot of times. We say, okay, this is what someone else is doing, so I need to do that same thing. Maybe not. If it's working well for them, let's try to emulate it. But
sure,
let's be cognizant of there might be certain things there that just don't quite work for you. So I think that's a great analogy. You mentioned something early on there that caught my eye or caught my ear there. Talking about how money can be intimidating, and why a lot of people, just like fitness is, kind of that you walk into the gym, okay, am I ready for this? Can I do this? And I have experienced a lot through my own business that people they're either afraid of money or they're afraid of the lack of knowledge of money. And I've seen both of those happen a lot. And because of that fear, they don't know how to move forward. They don't want to move forward because they're like frozen in time of, okay, I don't want to make a bad decision, so I'm not going to make any decision. But there's this big level of just intimidation by what money is, what it does, how it feels, how you're supposed to react to it. I feel like a lot of that is based around the fact that money is personal, it's emotional, and it affects every area of our life. But if we don't understand that in a healthy way, we're scared by it, honestly. How have you seen that kind of come into play with clients or just in life in general? And why does that make your work so important?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think part of the problem, Austin, is that there is this continuous messaging out there around money. And this has been around since the creation of money. So this isn't anything new, but it's that, because money is analytical and that there's a calculation, that it's mathematical in nature, that the suggestion then is that whatever looks best financially is the right answer, and you shouldn't choose any other answer except for the one that is right financially. Mm-hmm. But then what happens is if a person can't stick with that plan, or it doesn't fit in their life, or it's not that maybe it's just not that important to them. Maybe they would rather have it be like, I just want to make progress, but I don't really care if I make progress in 6 months or 1 year, right? Like I'm good with it taking a little bit longer. What happens is there's a lot of guilt or shame that comes from that. And then I think that builds hesitation and resistance, which is like, well, if I can't do it the right way, then why bother, right? Yeah. And it's this idea that like, you should want what everybody else wants, or you should want to have $1 million in the bank or like those types of things. And it's like, what if you just asked yourself, like, what do I want? And then put your money behind that and allow the skills and the habits to form from a really positive, encouraging place, because it's something you want. I think about my kids, Austin, and, I have a 7 and 8 year old. And so we were talking about money a lot, and they get allowance and that kind of thing. And we tell them that it's okay to, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Actually, what was I about to say about my kids?
They're awesome and you love them.
They're awesome and I love them. And absolutely, and today's a Friday, which means school was hard this morning, getting ready for school. Oh my God, I just lost my train of thought on what I was going to say about yes. Okay. Yes, of course. Okay. We don't force our children to save money, which I know is an argument. I'm not saying that if you encourage your children or make them save, let's say, 25% or 50% of their allowance, that's wrong. I'm not saying that at all. I think there's so many different ways we can all do this stuff, right? But for me, what I have found with my kids, and, parenting is one of those things, you got to parent the kid, right? And with my kids, what I have found is I don't force them to save. I help them to think of something that they want that requires saving. And then I encourage them to save their money with the idea that it is building the skill, but from a place of desire, right? From a place of like, let me have this be fun. It's positive enforcement, that sort of thing. And my kids are great savers. Like, they are really, really good. And it's because I think we've done it in a way that, like, I'm not forcing it. I think about when I was growing up, I was forced to play the piano. I was forced to take piano lessons growing up. And I hated it because I was forced to do it, right? Like, I really didn't want to do it. Now, of course, I'm older and I'm like, man, I really wish I would have like stuck with piano. Of course, right. Of course my parents were right. But it was almost because it was forced on me. I didn't want to do it. And I do think there's this element of like, the way money is oftentimes discussed is that like, you should do this, or this is the way you have to do it. And I think the more that messaging becomes like the way that it's talked about, I think it creates a wall for people, honestly, of like wanting to even explore, like, maybe there's a better way I could do this, or maybe there's a way that I could do this that would feel good to me, even if it's not that way. And so I think it does create that little bit of like a wall that people don't even explore that desire around money. And I mean, I think the other reason is people tend to say like, well, I never learned how to manage my money. I didn't learn it in school. My parents never taught it to me, and that sort of thing. And here's what I want people to know. If you have a listener who is thinking that right now and like sort of internalizing that, and what happens is, it's one thing to think that and to know that and to say like, I didn't learn how to do this, but it's another thing if you're using that to hold you back from to learning more about it, right? Just because you didn't learn about it doesn't mean you can't. But here's what I want them to know is like, I actually did learn about it. Like, I have a degree in finance. I have a master's in accounting. And when my husband and I first got married, I was not great at managing my money because what I learned in school about finance and accounting was not actually practical to the real world at all. Like, it really wasn't the very hands-on, here's how you logistically and practically manage your money well, right? Like, the day-to-day moving pieces of it was not taught in school. And I have the degrees, right? So it's one of those things where it's
science,
like,
but not the art of it.
Yeah, it's like the academic or institutional part of it, but not the really practical, down to earth, hands-on, like, here's the real world element of how you manage your money in an online world, especially, So I do think there's some of those beliefs around there and hesitations and that sort of thing. And you were talking, Austin, a minute ago about sort of the fundamentals, or what you consider sort of your core fundamentals or tenets of money, right? And I actually believe, I agree with the ones that you said. And then I also think that the very first part of managing your money well is simply deciding you're going to do it. That is really and truly, and it sounds so simple, but it's actually the hardest piece. And I don't mean just decide one time. I mean decide and then decide again and again and again. So when something doesn't go perfectly, or if you have a whammy and you have to tap into your emergency fund, or if a $25 thing has to go on, a credit card because you ran out of money to put gas in your car, decide a day after day after day that no matter what, you're going to keep getting better and better and better at it. That sometimes those setbacks happen, especially at first. And it's just like the person who wants to lose weight or wants to get stronger. You have to decide every day you're going to go to the gym. You can't just decide one time, I'm going to get in shape, and then expect it to be easy from there. You really do have to have a resolve about it that, like, no matter what, when the going gets tough, And even when it gets good, that I'm going to keep at it because it can get even better.
Yeah.
Right. And that is one thing I will say is that for a lot of my clients, they start feeling good within 30 days. You probably know that, Austin. Like our clients start with us and within 30 days, they're like, oh, it's like the pressure, the weight of what they've been feeling is off within 30 days.
Well, they have clarity and direction of where to go.
They can see it finally, right? Yeah. They're like, oh, now I can see all these moving pieces and I can see what I'm working with. And like, even if it's not beautiful and perfect and like an easy situation, it's like they can at least see it and then they know where to pull the levers and what to do about it. And so, yeah, it makes them feel so much better. And also our job at that time is to sort of say, I know this is better and this is awesome. And I'm so glad. And this is just the beginning. Like there is so much more. And so we got to stay committed. We got to keep deciding every day that we're going to do this.
That's awesome. I love that. Especially your comment about teaching the savings. And I kind of want to add on to that because I think we see a lot of people go, well, I need to save because that's the right thing to do, right? And they kind of get this unhealthy connection to that's just what I'm supposed to do. And they either are good at it or they're not good at it, but it's just what you're supposed to do. But then a layer on top of that, I feel like some people almost go to the extreme of saying, I have to save no matter what, because what if I don't have the money later on? And I see a lot of that through the coaching side of clients have this scarcity of, what am I going to do? If I don't have the money, what's life going to look like? I have to be sure I've got money in the bank. And they don't necessarily hoard the money, but they are so focused on saving that they are afraid to take money and pay down debt. They're afraid to, take care of these other things that would make their lifestyle more enjoyable. They're so focused on save from a toxic scarcity standpoint because they're still afraid of, what if I don't do this? So I love the idea of not making it your personal decision for the right reasons. And I think that can grow and expound. And on the other side too of spending money, right? There's times when it is good to spend money. It is good to make an investment. It is good to make a purchase. We should want to get money out the door because that allows us to have a return of satisfaction and joy and fulfillment. And it goes both ways there. And there's this healthy balance. Again, we haven't been taught to make the right spending decisions. We haven't had that practice ingrained in us. And this is a good purchase to make. You shouldn't feel guilty about this. You shouldn't feel like, even if this isn't a necessity, if you have saved or budgeted or planned for or have the money for it, great, go buy that thing. Right? I've had so many people say, they've almost defended their purchases by saying, they have this reason for doing it. I'm like, you don't need a reason. If you have the money and if it's a smart decision, it's fine. You don't have to be, limiting yourself all the time. So there's a lot of this lack of almost confidence, I think, whenever you first start out.
Trust.
Yeah.
I think.
Do I trust
yourself.
myself to make the right decision? And I'm either going to react from I'm going to go buy this to make myself feel good, or I'm not going to buy it because I don't know if it's the right decision. I'm going to keep saving, or I don't know how to save the best. That's what's so much fun about our job is we get to break all that down. We get to help them get to the root of, okay, what do you want to do? How can you accomplish it and feel good about it? And I think that's one of the main things.
Here's something that I've noticed, Austin. I'm curious if you noticed it too with your clients. In the first, let's say, month or 6 weeks, they might come to a session and say, can I buy this? They're asking for permission sometimes. And my answer is, I don't grant permission or deny permission. It's my client's money. My job is to help them see the decision clearly so they can make a really great decision for themselves. So I always say, let's take a look. Let's see what would the impact of this decision be? And then ultimately, are you okay with that outcome, right? Like it's totally up to the client, but my job is to sort of show them how to make that decision so that going forward, they know how to make that decision on their own and they don't feel as if they need to run it by me sort of thing. So that's typically what happens the first 6 weeks. And then the second 6 weeks or so, they'll come to a session and they'll say, I bought this, but they're also like trying to justify it to me. So they're not asking permission, they're doing it or not doing it. Cause sometimes it's also like, hey, I didn't buy this thing and I can't wait to tell you why I didn't sort of thing. Right. And sometimes they're like, I didn't buy it because I know I don't have the money. And I'm like, well, do you know that you don't have the money? Or is that just sort of you in the past, you haven't had the money. So you're so accustomed to thinking I can't buy that because I don't have the money. Or do you truly not have the money because you looked, You confirm that the outcome would not be what you want. Those are two very different things, right? And then it's also like, sometimes they're like, I bought it and here's why. And they're sort of justifying it to me again. And then the last sort of like the phase that we're always trying to get to is they come in, they aren't justifying the decision one way or the other. They're sort of like, they're actually bragging or raving. And I love this. I don't mean bragging in a bad way. I mean, they're like proud of themselves and they're actually sharing with me the decision they made and why they made the decision. But the energy about it is very different. And it really does come from that confidence or trust, I would say, right? When they first start, they believe that they don't make good decisions with money, that they're not good with money, right? You hear it all the time. Like, I never learned how to do this. I'm not good at this, that kind of thing. So they're relying on us in order to give them the skills and help them trust themselves. But then eventually, like our job, our job is to get our clients financial results. Absolutely. More money in savings, less debt, higher incomes, better spending, more leverage spending, let's say, all those types of things. Absolutely. And I think our job is to give our clients the skills to make good decisions so that they learn to trust themselves with money, right? Because I believe if I can do that in 90 days, then that's going to serve you for the rest of your life. And all the financial results will come over time as a result of that trust, because a lot of the avoidance around money, like money avoidance, in the sense that like, I'll just do it and I'll figure it out later. That is an avoidance. Like, I'm not actually going to face the decision. Right. Like really full on. Right. I think comes from a lack of trust. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to look at. I don't know what I'm supposed to consider. I don't know what factors are important to me. I don't really trust myself to even know what those things are or know how to evaluate them anyway. And so I'm just going to have to figure it out later, sort of thing. And I do think if we can give people those skills of like, here are the things that are most important to me. And so here's the factors I'm going to consider when I make decisions. And here's the things I'm going to look at, then we can't ever guarantee that a decision always works out the way that we want it to work out, right? Like, none of us have that ability. But if we can always look at it and say, but I've made the decision the right way, and based on the information I had at the time, I know that I made a smart decision and I was prepared for any outcome that was possible, right? So I always tell my clients, whenever we're making a big decision, and really any decision, but oftentimes the bigger ones, it's really easy for people to play out best case scenario when they're making a decision, right? So like, well, I'm going to buy an investment property and I'm going to rent it out, and I'm going to be able to rent it out and make $500 a month on it. And that's best case scenario, right? Right. I always make us play out worst case scenario. What happens in a worst case scenario? What does worst case scenario look like? What are those, circumstances? Is it that somebody doesn't pay for 6 months, or that, during COVID, there was a lot of states or cities that had, you couldn't evict somebody, but also so there was a freeze on evictions. And so you were literally paying for this house that had people in it that you couldn't collect rent and you couldn't evict them, and like that kind of thing. So it's like, what would you do if you went a year without collecting any rent? What would you do then? And the idea is, if you make a decision based on worst case scenario, most often worst case scenario does not happen. I will say that. But then when it happens better, you're just in a really good position. And then if something bad happens, because sometimes whammies happen, you're at least prepared for it. And I don't mean just prepared financially, but prepared mentally, emotionally, the time commitment, all of that. And so our job is to really help, I think, plan out all the different scenarios that could happen. And then, are you still okay with this decision? And if so, let's move forward.
Yeah. I think that's why you can't make any financial, in my opinion, you can't make any financial decision without understanding your emotional tie to that money or to that decision, because we're all driven by that emotion of, we either want to achieve pleasure or avoid pain, right? It's just that customer psychology. And so many times, like you said, Kelsa, people come to us asking, can I do this or should I have done that? They're looking for that validation or that guidance because they're still trying to understand, how do I relate to the results of this decision? What does this mean for me? What's the impact of this for me? And they don't want to experience pain. They want to find that pleasure. So they're trying to find that balance in, this is a mathematical question with an emotional implication. And how do I merge those two? And, a lot of times I spend the first 3 months with people just getting them to relate to money and think about money and talk about money in a way where they are emotionally mature enough to then apply the math to the equation and figure, okay, because I understand what this will do for me, I am confident in how this works out within my budget, within my long-term plan. I can walk them through the process of dissecting that the very first session, but they're not going to be able to grasp the whole concept of that because they're still trying to learn, what does money mean to me? How does money make
Mm-hmm.
me feel? How do I respond when someone says you are good with money or you need to improve upon money? Just what does that do to my psychology? But you're right in that as soon as people kind of get that foundation of this makes sense for me in my situation and I feel comfortable with that, then it does become almost this game of how can I continue to up level it and to do better for myself. I even had a client here a few weeks ago. We were talking about a big purchase, and I said, here's three options you could consider based upon what you want to do and what you're comfortable with and what makes the most sense to you. I said, here's my recommendation, but I want you guys to do what you're comfortable with. And knowing that they're not going to be comfortable for the very best mathematical option because they're not quite emotionally ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a balance of where you can maybe not be as aggressive on the financial side, but you can be confident and comfortable to get there. And I think those types of conversations are what really give people that long-term confidence to say, hey, I can do this. I've got this. I know how to manage my money, and I'm going to keep doing this every single day.
Absolutely. You know what? It's sort of what you describe, and this is something I talk with my clients all the time about too, is this idea of having their buy-in, right? And them feeling excited about a course of action or about their plan or about the decisions they're making, and how we could look at 10 spreadsheets that analyze the outcome of a decision you're trying to make, right? And some of them are going to be better in the sense that, like, let's say you're getting out of debt. You might be able to get out of debt faster, save a lot of money in interest and that kind of thing. But the level that you have to show up in order to achieve that is maybe not one that you're bought into. You don't believe it's sustainable. You don't think you can do it, whatever the case may be, right? And then there's one that like looks good. You're going to get out of debt, maybe not as fast, maybe with a little bit more interest, but you're like, you know what? My life looks good in that one. Like that feels sustainable to me. That feels doable to me. That feels like a healthy balance to me, right? Now, I always tell my clients, I want you to go with the one that you are most bought into, not the one that's prettiest on a spreadsheet, because what all of those spreadsheets don't take into consideration is the buy-in of a client. And what I have seen over 15 years of doing this is the buy-in of a client is the most important thing. If a client is bought in, they are going to be more creative problem solvers when something goes wrong, right? So if they believe in that plan, when something tries to derail it, they're going to be like, nope, I don't think so. We're going to stay on this track, right? Like, I got to figure this out, sort of thing. They're going to be willing to do different things because they actually feel excited and bought into the plan. And what ends up happening then is that plan actually ends up looking better at the end of the day than what the spreadsheet showed, right? Now, if you take the other example where, yes, this other plan A might have looked better on a spreadsheet, right? It might have had a faster result, less interest, better financially, that kind of thing. But if they weren't bought into it, the first sign that it's not going to work, or the first whammy or something, they're going to be less creative with problem solving, right? And what I have experienced is that if they aren't bought into it, it doesn't matter how good it looks on a spreadsheet, it doesn't end up happening that way anyway, right?
Right.
So the idea is, like, if you're bought into it, chances are it's going to look even better anyway, because we can only make a decision based off what we know today. And then our job, especially as the coach, is to always be scanning for new opportunities and seizing those, right? So it's like, we know when new things come out, or new options, or if interest rates are better, or, you know, whatever the options are for sort of like leveraging the current situation. I think we're really good as experts at like really scanning this situation and making sure that we're seizing those, which means right now, this is your plan based on right now. But if you ever get a raise, or you get a bonus, or you get a tax refund that's more than we're expecting, or you get a gift, or like all of those types of things just speed this up. And we're not even taking any of those into consideration right now when we're creating the initial plan.
Yeah, you're making what I call a baseline, knowing that anything above and beyond this is just icing on the cake, and you can even go attain, faster success with that. Or on the other side of it, if something changes and this goes down, we at least know where what we're dealing with initially, and then we can handle that. It's there is never a one size fits all plan to any of it, and that's why coaching is so important, because if you go learn online, great. If you go talk to an expert, great. But if you work with someone who can walk you through your exact situation day in, day out, week by week, through every month and every year, you get the best outcome for yourself. And it's based upon the work that you put in, obviously, but it's because you're getting a plan that works for you from someone who understands your situation, who understands the nuances of management, who understands all these different intricacies. And it's fun for us. We love to nitpick those little details and find what's the best solution, what's the best option. It's, it's a challenge, and we get excited by that. But
Another
circle,
thing.
yeah.
Oh, really quickly, just because I think it kind of ties into everything we're talking about, trust and just sort of the plan and, everything, is that the way you manage your money today may not be the way you manage your money 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And I think that is one of the other values and benefits that we provide as coaches, is that we see sort of the change over time that our clients experience. And that gives us the insight in order to see it coming in the current client, right? Where they don't always know that. So what often happens when there's this mindset that I have to manage my money a certain way and there's only one way to do it, and that's the right way, and I have to do it this way. One, not only are you not creating opportunities where you can trust yourself to make critical decisions in the moment, because you're just sort of like trying to make decisions within a box, but then it's harder to make a decision later when all of a sudden that plan stops working for you. And a great example is before you have kids and after you have kids, right? Like your budget, right. The things you care about, the expenses you have to pay for, the time you have to manage your money is different from before you have kids until after you have kids. And so there's a lot of times where a client will come in, and it's one of the benefits of working with a coach long term, right? A lot of my clients will work with me for years and years and years, and it's always really intense at first, and then of course it's not as intense over time. But the idea is, like, as life is changing, I can say, you know what? It's almost like they try to fit a square peg into a round hole. And it's because the plan worked for so long, and all of a sudden it's just not working anymore. And it's hard for the client to see that sometimes, and to acknowledge it without internalizing it and think, I'm just doing bad with money. I'm not making good decisions. I'm not sticking to the budget. And it's like, well, you're not sticking to the budget because you're bad with money, or is it because the budget no longer fits your current life? And we actually need to modify the budget. We actually need to come up with a plan and maybe a way of managing your money that is easier for you. Like, it's really normal the first year after my clients will have their first baby is we're going to set up some automations. We're going to do more automated items with their money management system than before. A lot of the times my clients will like to be hands-on with their money. They like to touch it. They like to push the buttons. It gives them a sense of control and confidence, right? Of like, I'm doing it. Yep. But then after the baby is born, it's like, you know what, we got to get some automation in place, because you don't even know what this is going to be like after the baby is born. You're going to be sleep deprived, like all this kind of stuff. And let's make this as easy for you as possible so that you're still making progress. Like, it is important to manage your money all of the time, but it's not always the most important thing. Like right after a baby is born, of course, it's a very important time in our life. And so the idea is it's okay to learn how to maintain. This is another example from fitness that I think I've really come to learn over time. There's a time in my training when I'm in peak season and I'm really going hard towards a goal, right? I probably have a meet coming up or something like that. Or if you think about a marathoner who's like in marathon training and the marathon is 2 months away, right? Like they're at the peak of their training and they are disciplined. They're probably watching, like my nutrition is so dialed in, like in the month before me, I'm measuring everything, all of that. Like I am perfect. And then there's times where you're in maintenance mode where I'm not, crushing it towards a goal. Yeah, my nutrition gets a little loosey-goosey, that kind of thing. And it's actually okay, right? There's times where a runner is like, a marathon runner is, I'm going to go run 3 miles a day. Just every day, I'm just going to go run 3 miles. It's nice and easy. It's light. I enjoy it, that kind of thing. And the same is true for your money. There are times where you're like, I have this goal. I want to hit it. I'm going to get super disciplined and focused because it's important to me. And then there's times where it's like, you know what? I want to manage my money well. I want to make sure I'm doing good things with it. And it's okay if I've got a little bit more cushion happening right now. Like I'm going to give myself a little bit more wiggle room, some discretionary spending, that kind of thing. Like things are good. Things are easy. There's nothing big that I want to be striving for. And so again, that's why it's so important to have a plan. but not because the plan never changes, but because the plan gives you opportunities to modify. It's like, you know what, I'm just going to change a couple of these numbers, or I'm going to change a couple of the ways I do these things, but I don't need to like throw out the entire thing and start from scratch every time.
Right. And to add on to that, it's a lifetime plan. It's not something that you're going to be on, for 1 or 2 or 5 years. You're going to be on it for 60 years, however long you're alive. And I think that's something that we tend to forget, because we look at, okay, a budget's going to change, periodically, but even just your priorities, your goals, your strategies, everything, depending upon what season of life you're in, that's going to modify and adjust. But even at that point, it's, you got to look at the big picture and say, okay, I can do this for a few years, and then I can do this for a few years, and then I can do this for a few years, and kind of look at those different seasons, those different phases, because you're never going to stop managing your money. It's always going to be a part of your life. It's always going to be that daily and monthly and weekly strategy, but it's going to be a lifetime plan that you continue to work through. So I think that's another key point.
I think it's also why it's so important to start as soon as possible and get
Yes.
started, because what you're doing right away will probably be some fundamentals or some basics. And, again, this is a little bit why managing your money can be so challenging at first, because I always say that our money is just a tool to live our best life. Money by itself is not important. It's that it gives us opportunities and allows us to care about the things that are ultimately important to us, right? But money by itself is not important. But when you first start managing your money, it's probably not going towards living your best life right away, right? Like you don't see that impact. It's going towards probably cleaning up something from the previous part of your life that you did, and that is true for all of us. That was true for me when I first got out of debt and that sort of thing. But then the idea is that once you do that, then the skills start stacking on top of each other. And it's like, I think about my own life, and again, I had to do some cleanup. I had about $60,952. That was the amount of debt that I had when I got married to Michael. And we decided we were going to pay it off. We paid it off. Of course, then we started saving. And I think about my life since that time. And, we moved across country for my job. So that was a whole new skill set around money, right? Of like, how do you do that? We obviously have bought a house. We've started a family. We've bought an investment property. We've started a business. We are now snowbirds, and we live half the time in one place during the year. And, the other half of the year we live someplace else. And it's like all of that. I can't imagine, Austin, managing the finances that I have today with 2 businesses, 2 rental properties, 2 houses that we live in throughout the year, right? So 2 different sort of like sets of like expenses and all of that, kids to boot and all of that, right? I would not be able to manage what I have today when I first started managing my money. Like I didn't have the skill set. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the confidence. I wouldn't have trusted myself with multiple investment properties in a business and that kind of thing. Those are the kinds of things that come once you've proven to yourself that you can do this, right? You're like, you know what? I am doing good things. I am making progress. I am getting ahead. I am managing my money consistently, even when it's hard, even when it's not always perfect and that kind of thing. And I've weathered storms. I've been able to manage all of that. And slowly but surely you keep adding. And I do think that is where wealth building comes from. I think that's where, when we talk about living, using money to live your best life, it's like we say that as coaches, and that is 100% true. I believe it wholeheartedly. And that doesn't happen in the first month that you start managing your money. You know what I mean? And so I think we have to paint that very realistic picture as well, which is like, it comes from the consistency in doing it, because you have to build, the consistency is what builds the skill set in order to be able to do it.
Right. So much good stuff there. I tell you that this entire conversation has been just jam-packed with gold nuggets. I am learning stuff, which is always fun. So I hope that everyone that's listening is learning stuff. So I want to take just a few minutes as we wrap up here to kind of circle back to what we talked about at the very beginning of the conversation of, having the fitness of your finances, taking control of that in your life, overcoming the intimidation of money, taking the steps that you need to be confident and comfortable and achieve those goals. And just to be real frank and honest, people can do this on their own. and it's probably going to take them a long time to do it, just because of all things we've talked about within this discussion today in this conversation. Or they can say, I know I don't know everything. I want to do better, and this is important to me. If someone were to walk up to you today and say, how do I get better with my money? What would your response be to them? To kind of put all of this into that, here is the fast track to succeeding in your life and getting where you want to be as soon as possible.
This is going to sound self-serving, but I promise that I would not say it if I didn't wholeheartedly believe it. And I'll give an example. The very first thing you do is you hire a coach. I really do believe that. And the reason I say that is because even if it's not about knowledge, because some people, sometimes when you're first starting out, you might know what to do about with your money. You might know that you should do something differently, or you should manage it a certain way, or whatever the case may be. I know what I should do when I go to the gym every day, right? But I still have a coach. And the reason for that is because my coach encourages me to add a couple more reps every set, or add a little bit more weight when I don't think I can do it. And he's there to spot me, right? So that I don't injure myself or that kind of thing. And all of those analogies are exactly true to what financial coaches do, but for people with their money. It's not only do we distill down the knowledge that you need. So like if you don't know what you're supposed to do, then we give you those steps. We give you the direction and the focused attention that you need. But then we know how to push a little bit harder when you need it. When we see the potential when sometimes clients don't see the potential. There's times where I'm like, let's add another $25 to that credit card this month, right? Like I know it's $25, and a lot of times a client might be like, well, it's only $25 though. And it's like, but we know the impact that those little steps can have. Just like my coach can say, we're going to add 2.5 pounds this week. And I think it's only 2.5 pounds, but that's where strength comes from, right? That's where the skill building comes from. And we're there to course correct when needed. We're there to watch any whammies or red flags that might be creeping up and like those kinds of things. We help them avoid injury. And I mean like financial injury oftentimes, right? Yeah. Like doing the wrong thing, saying yes to an opportunity. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, Austin, I'll have a client and their car breaks down or gets into a car accident, like right while we're in the middle of coaching, right? And of course, like replacing a vehicle isn't something that was on our plan, right?
Right.
And one of the questions I like to ask is, if this would have happened 6 months ago or before we started coaching, what do you think you would have done? What steps would you have taken? What would you have researched? Who would you have talked to? What would you have thought your options were? Because I want to be able to point out, like, here's what you would have thought was the right thing to do. Here's what your best would have looked like, right? And then we're going to analyze the decision in the way that I want us to analyze the decision, right? And we're going to figure out what all the options are. We're going to brainstorm solutions, all that kind of stuff. And we want to be able to compare the two so that they can see the differences, right? Yeah. And sort of like, here's what I can do going forward. And my coach in the gym does the exact same thing for me. So I know I could go to the gym every single day on my own. I am stronger, better, more consistent. I enjoy the journey more when I have a coach. And a financial coach does the exact same thing. And so I really do think you can research things, you can Google things, all of that. The biggest difference I would say between Googling something, downloading a training plan, let's say, and hiring a coach is the really customized, personalized, what is best for you kind of training, right? So it's like my coach knows that my left glute isn't as strong as my right glute. And so he gives me very specific exercises so that I can do that. I know when my clients have, sort of limitations on their income, or they could pick up overtime maybe, or those types of things. So I know how we can optimize the situation as best as possible. And that's what a coach can do, because we see so many different situations. The client only sees their situation. Yeah. Right. But we see so many. So I know it sounds self-fulfilling or self-serving and all of that. But if I didn't believe wholeheartedly in what I do, then I wouldn't do it anymore. Like I really and truly love what I do. I love being able to point to the results that our clients get, like the actual tangible results. That's always fun, right? Like there's proof right there. Yeah. But one of the things that I do, and I don't know if you do this too, Austin, is I'll ask my clients when they start coaching to score on a scale of 1 to 5, score your confidence level with money. And 1 being, I'm not confident, all 5 being, I'm super confident. I'll ask them to score their stress levels with money. 1, I'm not stressed at all. 5, I'm like, can't sleep at night kind of stress. And like those types of things. And then we score those periodically, every 90 days or that kind of thing. And so not only can we point to the tangible results, you have more money in savings, your debt is going down, your income is up, or like those types of things, but we can always also point to, and you're feeling better overall. You're beginning to trust yourself. And like, yes, maybe it's not a 5 out of 5 confidence yet, but it's no longer a 2, right? Like you're now at a 3 or a 4, right? So we're making progress, and that's really important. So I think hiring a coach, I think, is the best thing that people can do if they're really ready to like do good things with their money and make big swings in their life and that sort of thing. And like once and for all, be like, I'm deciding I'm going to do it. And in order to decide, and I know I might need help with that decision on a consistent basis, like I'm going to sign up for a coach who's going to hold me to that.
And to add to all of that, the client usually has their own perspective of their ability and what to do, and it makes sense to them. And, you said we bring all of those outside variables together. We get to see them in a way that they don't even see themselves. We get to see their strengths, their weaknesses. We get to walk them through. I think that you could do this because of these 3 things, or I think this would actually be harder for you to accomplish because of these 2 pieces. And we get to help them see what they are unable to see because they have, they're not necessarily narrow focused, but they only know and experience what is natural and comfortable and has been historically their pattern. But then we help them break out of that and try something new and learn, okay, I actually could do this that I didn't have the confidence in before. So even if they know all the things, they're still going to see through their own perspective, their own lens, and their own comfort level. And like you say, we get to kind of say, hey, think about this. What about that? Have you tried this piece? This is how you could still do that. And this opens up that door to so many new opportunities. So I completely agree. Self-serving as well, that a coach is the best investment you can make in your finances.
I'll tell you really quickly,
way to do that.
If you don't mind me adding this really quickly, Austin,
Yep.
In my training programs and the academy and stuff where I mentor other coaches, I tell them one of the things I really feel very passionately about is that you won't ever hear me talk badly about my clients. So, there's sort of this idea that like, if you're not managing your money well, then you must be stupid, or like, oh my God, how could you do that? You're so dumb, or like those types of things around money is oftentimes like sort of spoken about in that way and through that sort of like tone. And I believe that like people in general, I don't think are walking around thinking like, well, this is stupid, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like I personally believe that people are just doing their best in the moment. And our job, my clients will come in and they say things all the time like, oh my God, I'm so mad at myself. This was so stupid. I'm so dumb. Like they're already saying that about themselves. Mm-hmm. The worst thing I think I could do is embellish on that or, play into that in some way. If anything, I believe, and I say this all the time in my training programs to coaches, I say, our job is to believe in our clients because they are going to borrow from our belief at first. Because our clients come to us and they don't necessarily have it, right? Like they need to borrow from our belief. So we need to have so much of it that we still have some left after they borrow some, right? Like after they take some. So like there's so many times where like I will tell a client, like, did you do your best? Was that your best in that moment? And is your best better today? Right? Then let's just like roll up our sleeves, like that kind of thing. Like we got work to do here kind of thing. Like don't beat yourself up. And seeing their potential, I truly believe people are doing their best. I think people are smart. I think they are capable of so much given the right tools and given the right sort of skill set. And sometimes they just need to learn that skill set. So I do think it's really important that that's the other thing about having a coach is it's not just the action steps. It's not just the to-do list or the strategies or the levers you're pulling. It really is the encouragement, the support, the belief on the days when you don't have it. And also the belief overall of like, I can see this 4 months out, even though you can't see it yet. Right. Like I've done this so many times, I can see it. So like helping them to paint that picture of what's to come, even when they can't see it yet, I think is really why hiring a coach is so important and why it's incredibly valuable to do that.
100%. And I'll be the first to tell people money management is hard. And I still mess up with it. I do this for a living and I still have times like, oh, that didn't make the most sense. But it's because it is not an easy endeavor. So even for us that do this every single day, we still run into problems and obstacles. So I always tell my clients, this is hard and you're going to mess up, and that's okay. We're going to get through this. We're going to do this together. I believe in you. You've got the ability to do it. Let's try it again. And that's just
Totally.
the only way to succeed.
Yeah. And if you think about how much we touch money, and I don't necessarily mean touch dollar bills and coins, because most people obviously don't touch like physical dollars anymore, but I mean how many decisions you're making on a daily basis about money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in the thousands a week, I would guess. And the idea is like, it's not going to be perfect. There's literally
Right.
no way that out of that many quantity, that large volume of touch points, that they're all going to go perfectly right. And that really shouldn't be the expectation. Should not be the standard. I always say that you will never, ever, ever be able to show me a perfect person financially. There is not a single person in our world that has ever made every single decision perfectly right around money. I don't care how much of an expert they are in money and that kind of thing. There's no possible way. That is not the bar that any of us are trying to set, right? And so I do think that speaks a little bit to one of the concerns that people have when they hire a coach is like, is this person going to judge me? Or
Yes.
then I can't make a mistake. What if I make a mistake and this coach is like disappointed in me or something like that? Every single one of my clients has made a mistake. Every single one of them has made multiple mistakes. I make mistakes too. We coach real people through real life, right? Like we don't coach perfect people. So I don't think that person exists. So, a client never has to be worried, I don't think, about making a financial mistake. If anything, it's like our job is to help them learn from that mistake and fix it as quickly as possible when it does happen.
Yeah. So good. So good. I am inspired myself. Hope everyone else has been listening to this is inspired. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there to do better, to find someone who can help you do better. Even each day we are working on doing better ourselves, and that's just a continual process. Whether it's with money, family, relationships, keep getting up, keep showing up, keep doing the work. Progress is bound to happen. You just gotta keep at it. So, wonderful, wonderful conversation, Kelsa. Where can people get connected with you, find out more about you, learn more of the wonderful financial wisdom that you have to share with the world?
Yeah, I think the easiest place is probably on Instagram. You can find me at Money Coach Kelsa on Instagram. You can check out my website, fiscalfitnessphx.com. And then if you're listening to this and you love money too, you like geeking out over money, you think the idea of sort of like helping other people with their money is something that you would find interesting as well. Financial coaching, I think, and I'm sure you can speak to it, Austin, is an incredibly gratifying work. It is. I love it. We help people achieve their goals on a regular basis. That's what I do every day, and it's really a lot of fun. So for that, you can check out financialcoachacademy.com or Financial Coach Academy on Instagram as well. So those are the two places you can find me.
Awesome. Well, Kelsa, thank you so much for taking time to be on the show, to have a fantastic conversation with myself, to share your wisdom and your insight. I love learning from you. It's been a lot of fun being a part of your programs and looking forward to continuing that. And just glad that we had a chance to talk shop and to share inspiration and hopefully change someone's life today. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Austin. And I just want to say, for the people who, hire you to be their coach, they're so lucky to have you. You are really good at what you do. I'm really proud to know that you're out there helping people with their money. And let's keep spreading the good word around money.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, folks, hope that you enjoyed that replay from season number 2 and that you gain additional insight and education from that. And as we go into 2025, I want to remind everyone that we're going to be launching season 3, the first episode of season 3 here in about a month or so, right in coincidence with our summit, Money Secrets for Marriage Summit. Registration for that is going to open in about a week. So be sure and watch our website at freedommoneycoach.com for more information on that summit. You can register there. It's a free event. We welcome any and all couples to attend that event. We're going to have some great speakers talking about money, about marriage, about relationships, about goal setting, about vision casting, all the things that are important in your marriage with your money. So Be sure and watch for more information around the Money Secrets for Marriage Summit happening March 18th. I'm really excited to bring that to you guys as we launch season 3 in March as well. So a lot of great things coming. But in the meantime, if you want to take action and get some more support before then feel free to head on over to my website. Again, that is freedommoneycoach.com. You can access some free resources, including a budget training, a PDF for communication, and always to schedule a free discovery call. So again, that's freedommoneycoach.com for all of the details, all the information, and all the opportunities to take the next step in gaining complete control of your money. Folks, we'll see you again next week on The Heart of Money.